Hi, everyone. Hi, Tadebo-san here, your host of the Power of Mindset podcast. Welcome to the show. Today, I'm very excited to have a guest, friend of mine from the triathlon community, Andrey Esipov. I'll give you guys a quick story about Andre, and we can dive into some questions and some of the things about Andre as far as, how does somebody like him think and function? And, a lot of whys as far as why would you be doing what you're doing and how do you do it? Because a lot of times, many people are really focused on results, but in reality, we all have heard of the quote, it's about the journey, not the destination. But if you've got a rewarding and good enough journey, destination always seems to be very impressive and something worth talking about. And a lot of these good stories come up when you do discuss about the difficult destination, the finish line you cross, right? So, metaphorically speaking, yeah, we will talk about a finish line, but we'll also talk about what does it take? How does it take to get there? What does somebody think about and how they function? And in reality, it's like you absolutely don't need to do that, but you do it anyway. And I think those people who have this unrealistic approach to life, unrealistic approach to pushing yourselves, pushing the boundaries and the envelope in the right way of pushing the envelope, tend to just have better things to talk about, right? And this is why I wrote my book and I came up with this podcast, and I want to get people like Andre on the call. I'll tell you guys about how I met Andre, and then we'll get him on. So uh, I've shared the story many times how I went from not being in shape to getting in shape, etc., running my first marathon, and I joined the triathlon team, and I started doing races and triathlons and Ironman races. I remember one day this was we were prepping really hard to finally go, and I think Andre, I might have shared this with you too. I told my coach, how can I break the 5 hour, Ironman 70.3? And he's like, it'll be rough to do that at the Maple Valley. It's kind of a hilly course, but yeah, it's doable. Let's train for it. And literally, I was just training purely on to crack the 5 hour barrier at that specific event. And because the year before that was 5 hours and 2 minutes. And the year after that, they added more elevation. So I couldn't just get 2 minutes quicker. I had to get realistically about 10 to 15 minutes quicker, according to what my coach, Paul, said. Anyway, so we trained. And I remember between that and the, September race, we were doing a track Tuesday, which I would see you often at track Tuesday practices, and you're one of the coaches as well. Um, and I had committed to do the tunnel marathon, which is a really good marathon to qualify for Boston. And I never ran Boston, never had hopes of doing it, but I was very close. And I remember telling my coach, I'm like, Coach, um, what do you think if I just, between now and the Ironman race, I can do this race, qualify for Boston. I'll do the triathlon. I'll crack the sub 5. Next year, I'll get to go to Boston. He's like, well, why don't we train for it? It's going to be a lot of work. You kind of peaked with your running. It's going to be tough. I remember I was kind of sharing that during our warm up, and you were tying your shoes, Andre. And you said something that really, really, in a good way, bothered me. As in, Hike, I don't think so. Maybe you need another year. It wasn't a doubt thing. It was more of what a coach should have told a player. And I remember, there's this thing I say, sometimes you have to be around the right people at the right time for them to say the right thing, right? Because I think as a good coach, you also understand the thing that I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to be respected. So I'll tell you what you need to hear. And I really needed to hear that from somebody I respect. Because I remember when you said that, I'm like, okay, I like Andre, I respect him, but he's doubting me. Why? And I'm like, maybe I need to work harder. Maybe I have to do more. Maybe Andre doesn't know me. Maybe he's right. And I kind of like had some self doubts because I probably have some kind of post traumatic stress disorder about people doubting me from childhood of not being accepted and being a social outcast, moving, not speaking English, getting beat up in America, you name it. So I thought about that. And then one day I remember Rocky had this thing, our head coach, he got invited to Norseman Triathlon. And I'm like, I've heard of this. I've watched a documentary on it. I'm like, let me just look into it further. I remember I watched the documentary again. It's, thousands of triathletes around the world apply and only like what 250 people get to go. It's like an honor to be selected. It's a big, big deal in triathlon industry. You go to, if I recap this correctly, maybe you can correct the story. You go to Norway. They pretty much, from what I saw in the documentary, they load you up on a ferry. They hose you down early in the morning with some cold water so you don't hyperventilate in freezing water. You have to do a 2.4 mile swim from the ferry to the shore, and then 112-mile bike, and then there's a full marathon, which sounds like a typical full Ironman distance. But then, from what I also read, it was half the marathon is flat, second half is like uphill, and the last like 5-6 miles you're literally rock climbing. And if you're lucky to get there without any aid stations, you got your own support system there. It's like very brutal. A lot of pro athletes have actually not finished this race. And, and if you get to the top, you're lucky to get a black T-shirt, right? It says congratulations or something like that. Which is, I want to really ask you about how that was experience. And remember, Rocky posted it, right? He's like, and Rocky's a badass triathlete. We all know he's one of the best endurance people in the country. Went there, did the race, and I looked up, and there was a way I can't remember how or what. I clicked, and then your name came up as a somebody who completed Norseman. I'm like, oh, this is Andre from our team. Is that right? And I looked up the last name, Esipov. I'm like, oh, that's Andre. And I actually asked my coach. He goes, oh yeah, Andre's done that. And he's like, I don't know how much you know about Andre, but that's a badass man right there. I'm like, well, I saw it said he finished 10th. I'm like, did I read that right? And he's like, well, yeah, yeah. I mean, he's like, Andre is the man. I'm like, oh. So I had to like go back and really like think to myself, somebody on that level of endurance who doesn't even do this as full time, and this is like a hobby of his, that has the mental capacity to achieve something where like a decibel point of people, like percentage of people get to actually do an Ironman race, and 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 like a point whatever percent of those people get to go to Norseman, and you go there and you finish 10th, and you told me there's something I can't do. And I remember, in a way, I needed to hear that because every time my coach assigned a workout to me, they were prepping for the Boston qualifier. I would pause my watch, and if he hears this, he's probably going to be mad at me. I would pause my watch, and I would do a 1 mile all out at the end. Every workout he gave me, I didn't want him to see that I was getting to zone 4, zone 5 on my training workouts. So anyway, I think that's what kind of helped. Anyway, long story short, Andre, that was my introduction and kind of getting to know you. And I was intrigued with that story, and I wanted to ask you, like, can you please come on a call? I want to get to know you a little bit better. So that being said, I do have a quick icebreaker question before we dive into some of the lessons and some of the things about the functionality of how does somebody like you think and function. Here's the icebreaker question I like to ask. You had a rough day, and I don't know what a rough day looks like in your life. I'm assuming an average person's rough day could be paper cut to you is probably like, I don't know, it's a lot more to give you a rough day. Nothing went your way, work issue, family, training, whatever. What's one piece of food or drink you consume to kind of help you fix that?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. I guess my go-to when having a bad day, I mean, it has to be a big cup of freshly brewed coffee that I make myself. It's like having a warm hug from somebody. It always helps me to put things back into perspective. Plus, it's a kind of great excuse for me to take a few moments for myself and just relax. So it's not really a drink or type of food per se. It's just making sure that I create a little bit of space for myself, right? Just to reflect, right, on the challenges of the day. Take a moment to take a breather and get back at it.
So it's more of a ritual. This is my reset, my start to my day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, or reset during in the middle of the day. It works both ways. It for me. Sometimes oftentimes it's coffee. Sometimes it's just going on a walk around the neighborhood for 5 to 10 minutes. Again, it's just kind of creating the space, right? Just to reflect on the day a little bit, take a pause, reset, and get after it.
I follow Jordan Peterson a lot, and I listen to a lot of his content, read his book. And one of the things he says, he's a fairly famous speaker now. He was a professor at university teaching psychology.
Yeah,
And one of the things he shared, the things we have to do for our kids is we have to create some kind of stability for them, as in some kind of a ritual. As in, they have a very chaotic life, and it's good to have certain way you start the day, a certain way you end the day. And I kind of stole that from him. And every night we have to read a page of the Bible, we have to pray, we have to count our blessings, and we have to go to sleep. And mornings we have a
yeah,
ritual too. They turn off the lights, make their bed, and I think that follows us into the adulthood. And I've noticed the adults like yourself, Andre, they do have some kind of a ritual. It's like no matter how chaotic it is, I have my reset. Right. And I've noticed that amongst a lot of successful people, and I've studied a lot of, ultra successful, and I will call you extremely successful, what you've been able to achieve in the triathlon world. And I've studied millionaires and billionaires, and very common thing, they all have a ritual. They all have a few things in common. So it's interesting to study people that think like the 0.1%, the one percenters. It's like, I just like to have my reset, my time to myself. And usually they wake up early, they have a cup of coffee, they have a walk or something to reset and be prepared for the chaos that's coming their way and do it again and again and again. Um,
yeah,
Andre,
exactly.
Andre, as much as we've spent some time together during training, I haven't got to know you. I don't know much about you.
Yeah,
Can you talk to me, like talk to us about who's Andre, where you come from? Give us your story.
yeah, sure thing. So I guess a short story of my life is that I'm a husband. I'm a father of two amazing little boys, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. I was born in Moscow. I was then moved to the United States for college in 2006. Since early age, I've been playing tennis competitively. So I moved to the United States on a tennis scholarship, and that allowed me to continue playing tennis at a high level while pursuing higher education. And you're probably familiar with kind of the situations, like back home from where both of us kind of come from originally. You kind of have to pick and choose. Like if you want to be competitive and try to play professionally a sport of any kind, you kind of have to pick that path and then probably put education on the back burner, and works the other way as well. But the United States allowed me to have this opportunity to actually pursue both at a high level. So that was probably like the pivotal moment in my life. And that's where I met my beautiful wife. So she was playing tennis on the women's team, and so we've been together since.
Mm.
I now work in the tech industry, so I'm really passionate about different ways of using technology to make the world a better place, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do that as my full-time job now. Like you mentioned, I'm really passionate about endurance sports, regularly compete in triathlons, running, cycling events. A few years ago, picked up a new sport called swim run, so we'll talk about that. It's a team sport, and then we've been competing together with Rocky, who you know really well, over the past couple of years together, doing that crazy sport. I enjoy looking at the different ways I can torture myself and challenge myself, push my limits. But the primary goal is really just to become, a better father, a better example for my kids, a better husband, and better teammate.
Mm.
I'm an avid traveler. I love exploring new places and cultures with my family. And through endurance sports, I was able to explore and experience different places in the world through this new lens. So that's one of the reasons why endurance sports are so kind of captivating to me, because it kind of helps me explore some of my other passions,
You can go to
as well.
Norway, do a race,
Exactly.
and have a vacation
Yeah,
if you can
yeah,
walk
yeah.
after.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get to see all those amazing, beautiful places that you would never see if you just traveled there as a regular tourist. So that's probably what kind of made me so hooked on just doing endurance sports, is because those races and those different events, they take place in such beautiful locations that um, it's tough not to love what you're doing when you're there.
Well, not just, Ironman, I know is the biggest name, but there's like Norseman. When they do set up the course, they try to make sure you hit some of the most beautiful bike courses there is. With all the
Yeah,
scenery, the farmlands, the fields, the open sky, the water, you get to see all the beautiful places you can cycle. And
yeah,
it's closed down for you. It's your playground.
yeah.
Andre, I want to ask you a question. This has been like kind of an obsession of mine too. My brother's a professional fighter. Um, I like pushing myself too. But there's always like one thing I'm obsessed about studying is the people, like the why behind it, right? It's not that you started, you were doing something before. So there's a point where there was a breaking point where you transitioned, um, pun intended, transition. You transitioned from, high level tennis, which you were, sounds like at the highest level, professional competing. Was it Olympic level tennis? Or how high did you get up in
Yes.
the tennis world?
So I tried to play professional. I had a few, professional points. But once I kind of started playing, well, once I decided to go to college in the US, I was like, yeah, it's probably not the path for me. And again, like I'm grateful that in college I was still able to play at a really high level, but my professional dreams kind of faded at that
Got it.
point.
Got it. But again, you don't just get into triathlons. Again, there's something behind the scenes. Again, this is kind of where I'm waiting to see. I think, my brother still fights, but there's going to be a point where he wants to stop fighting, but he's going to be wired a way that he needs a challenge. And I've noticed there's a break point, some kind of a tipping point amongst a lot of triathletes and endurance athletes. Like, what was the point that you decided I'm gonna give this endurance sport a try? Like, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, so I actually haven't like really seriously considered, taking up endurance sports seriously up until probably my, mid 20s. So, like I mentioned before, I was kind of solely focused on tennis. But while in college, our tennis coach, he showed us a movie. It was a documentary of Ironman Hawaii. I can't remember what year it was. But that was kind of his lesson, right, on mental toughness. And I've never, heard of triathlon before. Never heard of, Ironman Hawaii, but that kind of opened my eyes on, what, humans are able to do. And that kind of captivated me since I first saw that documentary when I was probably, I don't know, like 18 or 19 years old. But again, I haven't really got into endurance sports, many years after, so like a few years after grad school. But what was really, always in the back of my head is like, okay, there's this massive challenge out there. Do I have what it takes, right, to be able um, to get there? Other people have done it before. Why can't I do it? So little things, happened. Started, running pretty consistently, couple of days a week. Started cycling to work. I've been swimming as a kid. My dad was a professional swimmer. So kind of started putting pieces together. It's like, well, why don't I try sprint triathlon? And then one thing led to another, and then over the years, I built up, the stamina, endurance, and strength to participate and compete in longer distance events. But again, the most captivating thing at the end of the day for me was that goal and the process of pushing yourself kind of to become better. And through that, I learned that if I can accomplish something in the sports arena that seemed completely impossible at first, I know I can do the same thing in my work life. I can do challenging things, um, uh, basically in all domains of my life. And that's why I've been coming back to endurance sports as a way for me to kind of grow as an individual in all aspects of my life. So that's kind of like the story and the progression of my thinking, what actually led me to studying racing,
Mm.
endurance
So,
events.
so there was no. I woke up one morning. I knew I wanted to do Ironman. I wanted to run Boston. I wanted to go to Norseman. It was. I decided to challenge myself, and it became a lifestyle. I just kept pushing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. At a point, it becomes your identity, and that's what you do. That's who you are.
Hmm.
And again, to me, the the main rewards are really not like the social acceptance or a golden medal right at the end of the race. It's really the process of discovering who you are as a person, constantly pushing yourself, finding your limits. And what I found most rewarding is that um, all those trials and tribulations that you go through in endurance sports are exactly the same as what you experience in your daily life. So it was almost like a perfect complement to the to the struggles I've been dealing with in my in other areas of my life.
And I that's a piece I talk a lot about. With even when I do a lot of business consulting, I talk to a lot of small business owners and their teams, and I'm like, I'm not here to motivate you guys. I'm just here to tell you the truth, and I'll tell you the truth. If you don't have some kind of a tough hobby outside of work, your work becomes the most difficult thing you're doing. It will consume you, and if it consumes you, you go home to a famous argument, and this argument is called "Who had the worst day?" argument with your spouse, and it's an argument that will suffocate your marriage. So think about what are some of the best marriage counseling advices? I'm not a marriage counselor, but I can tell you this. If you push yourself outside of work somewhere, endurance, weightlifting, something that gets your heart rate up to feel stronger, better, capable, other areas of your life indirectly start being positively impacted by your direct involvement with something difficult. And Andre, you get that really well. And there's something you said I want to kind of emphasize. You said push yourself, suffer, suffer, as in one time we were our group, we were on the Zwift. It was like a 3 hour Zwift ride. What do you talk about 3 hours on Zwift? Dopamine is firing up, endorphins. We got cortisol, all these chemicals. We're dying. We're drinking electrolytes and conversations. I think some of the best conversations happen during those sessions. And a subject came up of the same thing what you mentioned: push yourself and suffer. Why are we drawn back to suffering in the endurance sport? In reality, from the outside person who doesn't get it, 99% of people, Andre, why? Like it's tiresome. Just do a quick workout and get back to work. Easier, easier, easier. But think about, nobody talks about the easy stuff. All the greatest stories, all the books that have been written about, all the motivation, all the discipline comes from people doing difficult things. But if most people don't understand, it comes with suffering. And a point was brought up during the Zwift call. I don't know, just kind of jumped out of my mind. I'm like, if you think about a human nature, how we are wired, right? For thousands of years, human population always, quote unquote, suffered, as in we average farmers were covering 150 miles a week on their feet. They were moving. How did we hunt for thousands of years? Our greatest weapon wasn't weapons because we didn't have weapons. It was cardiovascular health, as in we had to run so much until we wore out the animal to catch him, to finally be able to use our short distance weapons. So in reality, suffering is part of your DNA. The more you suffer, the more human you feel. The less you suffer, less human you feel. And that's why you notice like the anxiety level, the suicide level, the cancer rates, the divorce rate, all these things has been over the roof. Why? Society's gotten very soft because we like the easy buttons. Click a button, groceries show up. Click a button, this happens. And instead of like us doing the work ourselves, aka suffering, we like doing it the simpler way. The money buys those things. And that's why you see people tend to get a lot more anxiety and um, a lot more stress on the level of where they made it in life financially, but they're using the money to buy comfort and it kills them. So, can you tell me about, at one point did you realize suffering was good for you? Like it was part of your success.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you pretty early on. And endurance is kind of good lens for it. Pretty early on, you kind of realize that if you go about your life, about your training, right, in a comfortable way, quote unquote, um, there's no progress. There's no real sense of achievement associated with it. Only when you start pushing yourself beyond what's comfortable, that's when you start realizing that, okay, the work I put in, it's actually rewarding and fulfilling. So deep inside of you feel that unless you do hard work, unless you get out of your comfort zone, um, you're not going to feel any fulfillment at all. So um, it comes pretty. I mean, it comes pretty naturally, and then the more you do it, the more you wanna repeat that feeling, and then again, you start, like you mentioned, you start seeing the results manifest themselves, in other areas of your life, where you kind of start pushing yourself just a little bit further to see what's possible, and then what originally looked like insurmountable challenges are becoming totally achievable things, and then you kind of get addicted to it, and then you want to keep pushing, um, because again, like this just elevates all areas of your life. If you're comfortable, it feels good in the moment, but after that,
Mm.
there's absolutely no fulfillment in that. So that's kind of my long-winded answer to how I discovered suffering and the benefits of it.
Yeah. I think if I'd put a definition to suffering, is it's human. You want to feel more human, do what humans are programmed to do, which is we're supposed to challenge, we're supposed to walk, we're supposed to sweat, we're supposed to, in many ways, physically suffer. So rest feels great, that we actually need rest, not we're just resting because we want to. It's very comfortable. It's not good for you. It is anxiety. It is depression. It is in many ways mood swings and
Yeah.
chemical misbalance. Like to stay stable, it's very human to be happy. It's very human to be motivated. It's very human to be strong. It's very human to be fast. It's non-human to do the other comfortable things. And I remember this reminded me of a documentary I watched a while back, and it was this American um, explorer in Africa, and he was doing an interview on this African tribe that was still functioning the way they functioned for thousands of years. As in, you wake up, there's no refrigerator. You have to catch your food. And
Yeah.
when he was like, I'm a marathon runner. I can't keep up with these dudes. They're just going full on, 6 minute mile on dirt for hours, So he tried to catch up to them. And I remember, and they would cut the food. They were all happy. They were high-fiving each other, healthy, strong. And he had an interpreter. And he actually, one of the questions he asked, which I really loved the way the response was, he the interpreter couldn't find the word anxiety or depression or sadness to tell him. It's like, can you ask him, like, when do they, like, well, how do they handle stress? How do they handle anxiety? Do they ever get that? And then the interpreter was trying to translate the message, and he kind of did, and the tribe members were laughing.
Hmm.
Like, what do you mean somebody will take their own life? Like, what do you mean somebody's not happy with life? We can't wait to wake up to start our day. We can't wait to wake up to go catch our food. And we catch the food, we celebrate. And they were very healthy. All of them had six packs. They were ripped and chiseled. They were like muscular, built, and the village was happy. The kids were happy. They were running around outside. And then we get to our, as you know, we live in the very wealthy part of United States, Seattle area, where multi-million-dollar house everywhere. We get to the multi-million-dollar houses, and it's quiet, it's comfortable, and it seems like we're sometimes taught to chase the wrong things. In reality, do what Andre does. And I always say, conditions never come before the mindset. I want to be healthy like Andre. I want to be motivated like him. He seems like he's the example of how a person should be. But no, he's just more human, but you have to do the things that the humans do, not drive the car he drives and live in the house he lives. Do the mindset pieces, which vascular health is number one. If you do enough of that, you become mentally successful as well, which turns into a financial success. Which brings me to my next question. Andre, what's success in your definition?
So that's a good question. I mean, like I mentioned before, success. I mean, really, it's not really about achieving a monetary outcome at the end of the road or getting a golden medal. Success to me really is just achieving a specific goal that I set out for myself or set of goals. But not just checking them off the list. I want to make sure that I feel a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. So we can probably get into it a little bit more, but goal setting is probably the number one skill that a lot of people lack. They either set unrealistic goals or goals that are not specific enough, or the goals that don't reflect them as individuals. So in my mind, success is really about nailing and feeling the sense of satisfaction from achieving a very specific goal that you strongly identify with. So for me, it's not necessarily, success is not necessarily measured by, extrinsic, values like social validation or fame from, winning a race. But again, rather the sense of fulfillment that you've done your best, you persevered to achieve a goal that's meaningful to me. So that's my definition of
Mm,
success.
I love that. I love that a lot. Um, Andre, you weren't really shooting for any of these results, but impressive results tend to follow an impressive mindset. And that's the piece I'm really intrigued by, about even to get to know the story behind. You push yourself, you get the success principles, you're doing the things that challenge you, so your brain functions the right way. There's a saying about luck, like preparation plus opportunity equals luck. Well,
Yeah.
you just keep preparing without any unconditioned, as in unconditional preparedness, as in I'm going to do it no matter what. If I get lucky, great. If I don't, then I don't. But if you do it unconditionally, you eventually get the opportunity and you get lucky, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you don't just by luck go to the Norseman. You don't just by luck show up to a triathlon and magically swim and magically do the transition, magically get on the bike. And, so this is just not how it works. Can you tell us about what did it take? I know it was probably 25-hour training weeks, to get to a certain level within your endurance sport. What did it
Yeah.
take you? I guess the story behind you going from triathlons to getting competitive and then getting to the questionably the hardest triathlon in the world?
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the process. Like you can't focus on the end result if without focusing on kind of the process first and foremost. Results, outcomes, they come later as a result of you sticking to the process. So for me, it was very much that. I never, when I started my endurance sports journey, um, I never had a goal of, finishing at the top of, the hardest, triathlon race in the world, or qualifying for Boston, or running an X time in a half marathon. My goal was to, okay, let's see if I can get the best out of myself in that particular race. Let's see what I need to do to get me there. And come race day, if I get a time of X, great. If I don't get a time of X, not a problem. There's always another day. So for me, focusing on the process was always kind of the number one thing, and that's what I tell all of the athletes that I coach, is that you can get all the fancy training programs, all the fancy training prescription, but ultimately, if you don't have consistency in your training, even if you're doing the very basic things, but if you don't do them day in and day out, you're doomed to fail. A lot of newer athletes, they jump immediately to the goal of, okay, I want to run a sub 3 hour marathon by by next year. But that's kind of thinking a little bit backwards. You really need to think, okay, what do I need to do on a daily basis to put me in a position to run the best race that I can possibly race. So over the years, that's been my focus. Slowly, goals just naturally were getting ticked off the list. What originally seemed hard became easier. What originally felt fast became slow for me, right? So by focusing on the process, it makes it easy for you to kind of keep going, and not set unrealistic goals, not set yourself up for failure. Um, and you have to have patience, and you have to have consistency, and that's what allowed me to compete and balance my sports hobby with life, work, and family. Is just kind of being consistent and making trade-offs, deliberate trade-offs, scaling down my training significantly when other life commitments come up. Um, so again, process is number one. And that's what ultimately allowed me to get to the start line of the race that you mentioned, Norseman.
I often say, and I think you mentioned comparison, as in if you set up a goal compared to what others are doing, you're gonna be disappointed. As in, set yourself realistic goals. And I think an unrealistic place where a lot of human beings find themselves is the comparison piece of, I'm comparing my chapter 5 to your chapter 20. Like
Yeah.
it's like, well, you to get to chapter 20, you got to read chapter 6 and then 7. If you skip one, you jump to straight to chapter 20, you're not going to be where Andre is because he's read every chapter of that book. He didn't just get bored with the book, put the book aside, picked up another one, read 4 chapters, put it away. And I think that's a common issue with a lot of people. We're chasing excitement over being okay with the boring, uncomfortable routine. And it goes back
Yeah.
to, I start my day with the coffee. I have a program, I repeat it, and I just believe the process. And you did begin your answer is it's a process. People don't respect the process. People just want to be excited. Well, that's why very few percentage of people get there. And a frustrating piece is everybody wants to be famous. Nobody wants to do the work. Like everybody wants to get to the top of, the mountain there at the Norseman, or finish the race, or get to Boston, but they don't want to do the work. They do it a couple of times. They get to chapter 4 and they're comparing themselves to Andre's chapter 20. They quit because it looks impossible, but they don't want to respect the routine. And every successful person has a routine for a long period of time. Um, Can you tell me like how was that? Like what you get an email? Does somebody send you an invite? Like what does the start to a Norseman race look like?
Yeah, so Norseman got on my radar actually quite a few years before I actually raced there. And I was exploring of different ways of how can I actually race it, knowing full well that the lottery process uh, it's very very tricky. Unless you're a Norwegian, the odds of getting in are very 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 slim.
So it's like it's
So
made more for locals and they made it harder for the outsiders.
yeah. So there's a few more, well, quite a few more slots for Norwegian participants, and of course, very very few slots for international participants. So I tried to enter, the lottery. I think a few years, didn't get in. But then I learned about this new triathlon racing series that was kind of being started in the U.S. And I think they call it extreme triathlons series, something like this. And I had a number of races in the U.S. that would serve as qualifiers, direct and indirect qualifiers to Norsemen. So like, oh wow, let me learn more about that. And there was a race up in Alaska, in Seward. It was also, extremely challenging race, very similar to kind of what you would experience in Norseman, a cold swim in a fjord, mountainous bike ride, run up a mountain towards the end. So I decided to sign up for that race. I think it was 2017. It's also a self-supported race. I had no expectations going into it, but I mean, since a kid, I've always enjoyed the outdoors and kind of the sense of adventure. And races like that are kind of perfect for it, where you not only race in a beautiful location, you're also sort of participating, in your own adventure. And that's what kind of led me towards trying that extreme triathlon out. So I flew up there with my wife as a support friend, and Rocky as well. Um, and then I ended up doing having a good race. I finished third overall there. And while I did not get the direct qualification slot, only the winning male and female got into Norseman directly on the day. That actually allowed me to sort of short circuit the lottery process and actually qualify
Mm.
as a podium finisher in that extreme triathlon for
Mm.
Norseman, the year after in 2019. So that's kind of how I made it to the start line.
And Andre, what was the distance of this qualifying race in Alaska? Full iron
Uh,
distance?
Yeah, that was a full iron distance. In some ways, like looking back at it, in some ways, some parts were actually more challenging than the conditions that I experienced in Norseman. The swim was very cold, very very cold. Um, um, the bike course was not as challenging as the Norseman one, but the run was comparatively as challenging. So you had to summit the mountain twice during the course of a marathon.
Mm.
Um, yeah, unfortunately, they don't have this race. They don't have this race anymore. Um,
I'm, I'm curious to hear some numbers. The race that you came in third, where you podiumed, what was the swim, bike, and run times? Do you remember?
can't remember off the top of my head, but swim times were kind of comparable to what I would probably swim in a traditional Ironman events, so just around 1 hour, 1 hour or so. So um, the cold water, of course, made it more challenging, but doesn't affect the times as much. Uh, the bike was also comparatively similar to what you would get in a kind of traditional Ironman event, so right around 5.5, 6 hours. And the run was very, very long, of course, because it was mainly very hilly, trail running in the first quarter of the race, and then the last 3 quarters is, summiting the mountain twice and going down. So it was closer to like 5.5 hours.
Got it.
Uh,
Got it. So,
yeah.
were you on a ferry, or I heard different stories that not always they start the race in Norseman off a ferry?
Um, Traditionally, that's how you start. And uh, when I when I did the race, the start was also, you start early in the morning. I think 4:30 a.m. It's pitch black. You get loaded up on the ferry. You get taken to the middle of the fjord, and then you jump into the abyss,
Oh,
black water, and then you swim towards a bonfire way out in the distance, at like
oh my goodness.
2.4 miles, 2.4 miles away. Yeah, I mean, all parts of the course was just kind of a small experience that was so different from each other, and you had
T-
to prepare for all of these
Tell
segments, in a unique way.
tell I'm gonna ask you about every single part about this race. Okay, so you're getting loaded up on the ferry, 4 a.m. I'm assuming, that's when you start putting on your tri suit. You got you're putting on your wetsuit, rolling it up. And again, on the documentary I saw, they were hosing you down with like this fire hose
Mhm.
to cool you body temperature down. Again, you're on this ferry, was it like 200 to 250 people that have the honor of doing this race? So you're on the ferry with 200 some people, you're being hosed down. What's going on through your mind?
A lot of nervousness, of course. I mean, you could feel the tension in the air. Everyone was very tense. Even the professionals that have been doing it for multiple years. The Norwegians. I mean, everyone is nervous before a race like that. You had the option to kind of get hosed down with water from the fjord if you wanted to. Opted not to, just because leading up to the race, it felt somewhat comfortable. I mean, as comfortable as you can get with cold water. So I just kind of decided to kind of take it all in and get my first feelings of cold water on my face as I jump in from the ferry into the water. But of course, that was an option for some people if they decided to do that.
Yeah, because the most nerve-wracking feeling is right before the race. Once you're in there, heart rate jumps up, and that's it. You're in the zone. You're in the zone for the next 12 hours.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
intense.
exactly.
I have major anxiety, especially with the crowd, and I have anxiety of water. I often hyperventilate, so I have to really focus
Yeah,
on taking a couple of big, deep breaths, and I focus on box breathing. But there was one time my first race, I actually swam out. I disqualified myself, and the
yeah,
moderator let me get back in. This was a local race. It was a small
yeah,
sprint, and that
yeah,
was the first race that started that got me the fever 4 years ago.
yeah.
Andre, so again, there's this fear. You got 200 and some people of the most badass, and this is mainly men, or is it men and women on the ferry?
It was a combined field, men and women,
Okay. So
all
so so
together.
some of the most badass men and women on the planet are there, all looking nervous, all jumping in. And then again, you get in the water and then you get to the bike course. And I'm sure the bike was probably one of the most beautiful sceneries you've ever seen. This is your definition. I get to combine hobbies.
Mhm.
What was the feeling like getting out of the water? Was it any different than doing any other race because of the how intense the start was and the story leading you up to this ultimate goal of yours that 99.99999% of people never get to see? Was there anything different coming out of the water as far as what was going through your mind?
I mean, outside of me being really cold and shivering, it was not actually not much different from other ways because you're like you mentioned you're so in the moment, you're kind of so focused on the task at hand that um, the only thing you can think about is, okay, how can I most efficiently move through transition and get on with the bike. Um, it was quite, of course, quite magical because you get this vantage point, from the water, looking onto the shore. And of course, I watched the documentaries of the years prior, and then you don't get the same view, the same perspective of how everything is laid out. So I definitely took a few seconds to kind of appreciate the moment, and that got me extremely actually excited to get the bike started because as you exit the water, you kind of realize that, oh my gosh, I just swam in this kind of cold body of water. Everything was fine. Sure, it was cold, but all the other competitors were just as cold as me, if not if not colder. So it was, it definitely took a few seconds to reflect on the experience, because again, like when you get to swim in the fjord, right?
Yeah.
So that was definitely amazing moment.
And Andre, there's a lot of people, and I'm wondering it myself too. They're wondering what, want to ask you a question about the bike too, but you get to a point of you doing really difficult races, but you keep on wanting to push yourself, right? It's again, I don't think I'll ever commit to anything like that. This is gonna, I don't think I'll be in the sport for the next 5 years, right? Maybe I'll stick to running. That's kind of what I have passion for. But you got into something, and I'm sure there's parts of the sport you don't like, but you kept going to get to a point where you just did this race, right? You came out of the water with freezing hands, and I bet your hands were probably frozen for the many miles on the bike too. But again, leading up to that, I want to talk about the mindset piece a little bit. Again, you caught yourself being in a very unique place. Again, you just mentioned, how often do I get to swim in a place like this? Like, how often do I get to do this? How often do you get to be on a ferry with 200 to 250 most badass people on earth? What goes through a mind of a person like you where you just want to keep doing it? Like, you just keep challenging yourself to put yourself in this position?
Well, what I keep telling myself is that all the training hours, all the sufferings, all the trade-offs that you have to make across your life and family to actually get to participate in an event like that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all worth it. So if I look back at it, um, all the work that you put in, kind of day in and day out, um, allows you, right, to experience moments like that. And without all that, without all those difficulties, those moments would be impossible. So, and that's kind of been my mindset all through the years, is that to me, racing, endurance sports, it's just a reward, right, at the end of the day. Um, Without the hard work, um, you don't get to experience any of that.
Mm.
Um, so if it were easy, I don't think I'll be doing it. A few years from now, because again, like, there's just absolutely no fulfillment in doing something that's easy and comfortable. Um, so to me, hard work, persevering for challenges, um, allows me to actually enjoy these moments.
Mm. I love that answer. I love it a lot. It's just not, we're sometimes we try to make sense of things. It's like, I remember I did a 5-day water fast, and I had a friend. Did you ask your doctor if you can? I'm like, well, did we ask our doctors if we can drink alcohol? It's funny, we don't ask permission to do the unhealthy things. Why are we gonna ask for permission to do the good things, the healthy things, the difficult things, right? Why do we have to make things sense? Why do we have to have somebody tell you, check box? Just, it feels human, do it. Like, it feels right, do it. And often that is the answer. Like, I don't have to tell you 2 + 2 is 4. It's a very complicated formula. You're adding an emotion to another emotion. There's never going to be the answer. There's just IQ, and then there's EQ, your emotional intelligence. Um, I'm assuming your hands were frozen coming out of the water. Did you have difficulty taking off the wetsuit?
Yeah, for sure. But that's where your support crew comes in, and um, that's what's so great about races like Norseman, is that it's you are experiencing it with other people. It's not just your own race, where you and only you are solely responsible for the outcome, and then for the entire race. Your support crew is very much in it with you, and not just on race day, right? Just many months leading into the race. Your family, your team, your your colleagues at work. I mean, all of them contributes to you actually making it to the start line.
Mm.
So making sure that you kind of cultivate and cherish, relationships, build new relationships with people, and it will ultimately, um, help you enjoy moments like that. Because again, without other people, like what I did in Norway would be impossible. So it's very much a team sport, even though it looks like a very individual sport in first glance.
It does take a village and the support system at home. So
Yeah,
your spouse supporting you is a big one. And that's I talk to this a lot of people. If you're going to commit to something difficult on your own, without the support system, forget it. Yes, you can do the
yeah,
work, but if you don't have the support, you can't do the work. Therefore,
yeah,
give a lot of credit to your significant other, your coworkers, like you mentioned, right? Because I'm sure there's days where you had to stay work or you had to come in early. Maybe you had to finish a workout before you came in, or maybe take a lunch break for a run. There's been a lot of
yeah.
flexibility to pull something else. Because were you train like 25-hour weeks leading into this race?
Yeah, there's a few months prior to the race. Yeah, like a few weeks were 20 hours plus of training. And this is before I had kids, so I could manage it. But nowadays I wouldn't want to manage a training load like this with kids, even if I wanted to. It's
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
it's not going to be feasible. So again, you have to set realistic goals given where you're at, given the constraints. Um, because again, without getting support from your village, uh,
you
it's
can't.
I mean you're doomed to fail. You can't. Yeah,
Yeah, it's impossible. I remember during COVID, we got a lot of time in our hands. So I said, you know what? Since we're all home and have all this extra time, everything is canceled. I used COVID to really push myself as much as I could,
hmm
right? And I was
yeah,
obsessed with the sport. And since COVID, things got back to normal. Actually, things got busier. People are
yeah,
overcompensating for the fact that they didn't do much over for a couple of years. Now they're over vacationing, over traveling, over partying, over getting together, over doing everything.
yeah,
So I had to take a step back and realize, I'm just gonna run and maybe do some weightlifting just so I can maybe do marathons. Why? Because less time consuming. I got a couple of kids.
yeah,
I have two boys. I have a wife. I have, businesses, and it's I can't. So at this point, I think running is a lot less time consuming. It's kind of what I'm leaning towards moving forward. We'll see where it goes. I might get back to triathlons, but
yeah,
Maple Valley was probably the last race for a little bit for me. Um, One thing I've struggled with on the bike, you can maybe tell me the story about the Norseman bike course. Yes, it's beautiful, but I feel like I'm suffering on such high level on the bike. I'm in a lot of pain. Saddle hurts. You're trying to push watts. You're
mhm,
tired, maybe I don't get to enjoy the views as much as you mentioned, but how do you
mhm.
get to enjoy the view on this 5, 6 hour bike when you still have to put in the watts and it doesn't really feel as enjoyable?
Yeah. I mean, truth be told, you don't really you don't really get to enjoy them that much. But there's a few moments during the race where you take a pause. You take a quick look around, and then just basically just appreciate all the beauty that's around you. But again, while you're at it, I mean, your focus is on task in hand. So there's not a lot of a lot of time to look around and sightsee. But I constantly remind myself to kind of get out of that zone. Um, take a little pause and kind of take the experience all in, and then get back to work.
So I'm glad you said that because I there's definitely most of the bike course. I'm like, I can't wait to get off the bike. I can't
Yeah,
wait to
yeah,
start running. And you start running, you're like, I can't wait for this to be over too. But the endorphins, the feeling after you're done, I mean, that is better than any drug has ever been invented. The best drug is the
yeah,
one you generate from within through this kind of suffering.
yeah.
Um, you finish the bike, you get to the run. I hear this is a brutal run because was it the last 6 miles? It's up a hill and then there's a mountain you climbing at the end.
it's a very brutal marathon course. Like roughly the first half marathon is on a falls flat, so pretty flat. Just follows along the lake. And then right around mile 13 or 14, you start to see this massive peak in the distance that you're about to climb. But before you actually get there, there's a really long, windy climb that you have to get through, and then the race organizers refer to that climb as zombie hill. It's because everyone looks like zombies climbing it because it's so steep and everyone is so exhausted by that point um, that they're gonna lose the beauty of their stride that they had early on in the race. But that's a very long climb just to get to the point where you can start summiting the peak. And it's again right around probably 10 kilometers of climbing like this. It's very steep grade. I think between 8 to 12% constant grade, just windy road keeps going and going and going, seemingly forever. And the last 5K is, I mean, it's just really, hopping on boulders and summiting the peak. But by the time you get there, this is, for me, it was really just kind of time for kind of celebration, right? And soaking it all in. I knew where my competitors were relative to me, so I knew I had a little bit of buffer. I still pushed, but again, it was a time for me to kind of absorb the experience as much as I could.
As much as I'm hearing, you know, it's an experience. Yes, you do something like this is the result of, it's the celebration, right? It's enjoy. I hear a lot of that, Andre, but I think there's a piece to, there's truth to that. Yeah, if you don't enjoy the process, you'll quit, right? You'll be disappointed because like it hurts. Nobody likes pain, but
Yeah.
there's somebody who comes in 10th. There's a very little joy in your training and the way you race because I believe you pushing yourself so hard, and you are, Andre. I don't think you can do an easy race. You're not wired to be the person that goes, I'll take it easy. I just want to get to the finish line. And you thinking the way you're thinking, you're gonna push hard. You pushed hard on the swim, you pushed hard on the bike, and you
Yeah.
pushed hard on this run, right? Because you came in, there's only 9 people ahead of you. We're talking, I don't know how many zeros before the dot and before the one. There's a very few people. Again, only 9 people ahead of you finished. What was that like?
I mean, it was definitely, a very like wonderful moment. So I was exhausted, but it was very elated, right? That I was able to not only finish the race, which was my original goal, but also finish competitively, uh, really well as well. But the feelings of accomplishment they come a little bit later when you have the time to reflect on the day. When you cross the finish line, of course, you're happy. There's a mix of emotions. You're exhausted. You're happy. You hug. You give Rocky a hug because he's been there. The whole way up the mountain with you. But it's the day after and the days following where you kind of truly appreciate the accomplishment.
Andre, so from what I hear, there's not even a medal. You get a black t-shirt. Is that correct at the finish line?
That's
Well,
your
yeah.
prize. It's a
Yeah.
black t-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that this race organizers have actually really figured out the point of this. The
Yeah.
prize is what you get to accomplish, not what you get to get at the finish line. Right? The
Yeah.
meaning behind you have to get many things in life going right to even get there. So you're actually celebrating the fact you're successful, period. Because you have to make sure your financial tank, your family tank, your friendship tank, and the fitness tank is all firing on fairly good, accurate balance to be able to even get to that finish line. Again, coming in 10th, it's just I can't fathom the fact that you went there and did so well. It's very impressive, Andre.
Yeah. Thanks, Hank.
Yeah. Were you shooting for that? Like, were you like, I'm gonna show up and just beat everyone, or just you like, it's just I'll give my best.
Yeah. No, and so that kind of comes back to kind of my approach to goal setting. Of course, I have specific kind of times in mind that I want to finish the race in, but I never ever set goals of that are related to kind of placings, right? So I need to finish top three in this race. I always focus on the process, and then all of my goals are a result of that. So for me, the goal was simple: get the very best out of myself on race day, and as a bonus, finish at the top of the mountain, get the black t-shirt, and that allowed me to train a bit more effectively. I didn't have this kind of baggage in the back of my head, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be disappointed if I finish 11th, if not 10th, if that was my goal, right? Original goal. So again, outcome, process focused goals for me have worked exceptionally well, not just in sports, but in life in general. So getting 10th is just a byproduct, right, of the process, of the daily grind, of the consistency. So I recommend that a lot of people kind of start focusing and setting goals that way, especially sports related goals. Uh, don't focus on the place, right? Focus on the process. How can you fine tune this process? How can you be a better version of yourself the next day and the next day and the next day? And if you do that, results come naturally, right? You start winning races. You start qualifying for Boston Marathon, like you did. You start completing Ironmans. And so that was probably the key for me as well to get a good place in that race.
So it goes back to the good old fashioned saying, it's about the journey, not the destination. Just enjoy the
Yeah,
journey, make it rewarding, make it uncomfortable, and you just might have the destination worth talking about, worth bragging about,
yeah,
worth celebrating. And people often ask the question, it's like, Andre, which path should I take? Well, there's the easy one and there's the difficult one you're trying to avoid, but that's the good one,
yeah,
right? That's the one that's going to have a good finish line. Well, why don't you commit to the more difficult one? Because often you're blessed to be able to consider a difficult path, but just know often the answer is, which path should I pick? Pick the one that's going to challenge you more. It's going to be more
yeah,
boring long term. It's not going to be as exciting anymore, but it's going to
yeah,
keep pushing you and pushing you because you will eventually get to quote unquote the finish line. Um,
exactly.
Andre, to be respectful of your time, I'm a little bit over. I did want to ask you one last question. Any last words of advice for anybody watching this show that somebody might be stuck in the rut of their life, whether if it's challenges they're having with their health, with their marriage, or they want to commit to something difficult? What's a simple advice you can give somebody to bring hope to start doing something to change their path?
Yeah. I guess I have probably five quick points that I think are important for kind of um, um, everyone to focus on. So number one, like I mentioned, is kind of not setting realistic goals, and then unrealistic goals that people set every day can just lead to frustration and disappointment. So focus on setting realistic goals that are achievable. Definitely have a plan. Having a plan of action, how you get to that goal, is absolutely essential for achieving success. If you don't have a plan, you're driving blind. Um, it's so easy to get overwhelmed and simply give up. If you have a plan, even if it's a simple one, and if you stick to it, you'll get there eventually. I mentioned this before also, is asking for help. Uh, there's going to be ups and downs in the journey, whether it's a sports journey or life journey. Everyone goes through ups and downs, and it's always important to ask for help when needed. Don't be afraid to reach out to others for advice and support. Uh, it'll just make your life and achieving your goals so much easier. Um, try to stay motivated. Again, through ups and downs. It's easy to get discouraged. Very easy to get discouraged when you face a very difficult challenge. So it's important to keep that motivation and focus on the end goal. So like visualization is key. So visualize you being successful or achieving that goal. And lastly, make sure to take breaks. Our society is kind of hardwired on pushing the accelerator pedal, right, at all times. It's great, during certain periods of your life, but again, without breaks, you're going to lose energy, you're going to lose motivation. You need time to recharge and refocus. So don't think that you taking a vacation or you taking a break or you skipping a training day or two is going to completely destroy your dreams and goals. It's in fact very much needed. So rest, and recover. That's when you actually grow. You stress yourself every day, but rest and recovery is what actually promotes all the growth that you're after.
I love that. I love
Those
that.
are kind of like five little pieces of advice.
I wrote every single one of them down. I set realistic goals, avoid unrealistic ones. Those will cause disappointment, which is why people quit, right? Have a plan. Without a plan, you're blind. I agree. That's like your flashlight in the dark. If you don't have a plan, you don't know where you're going. You're going to trip and fall, and you're going to get off the path. Ask for help. This is huge. Mentorship, and this is a piece that took me for a long time. I think I was maybe not necessarily proud. I thought maybe I was bothering people. Maybe I'll figure it on my own. Don't reinvent the wheel. Go to somebody who's done it, because the person who's done it probably asked for help somebody else. There's 10, 20, 30, 40 years worth of mistakes you can learn from one person who can actually tell you what not to do, because some of the greatest failures is not having the person telling you what to stay away from, because one injury can cost you a career. Stay motivated through habits, through ups and downs. Life will beat you up, but you need to find ways to visualize where you're going. I think I love that a lot. And number 5 is make sure to take breaks. I agree. Our society is push, 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 work, work, work. It almost frowns upon people who take breaks. But again, don't take this a little too close to heart, like, oh, I gotta take all the time off in the world. No, 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 no. Work hard, but know when you're overworking yourself. Take the day off if you need to. Don't train 7 days a week. I don't. The people that are, Andre, the people you're giving that message to is the ones probably like me who need to take a break. I suffer from that, and I'm getting better. And my wife will probably even tell you, Hike needs to work on that. I'm working on it. I promise. This is probably why I got injured for 8 months. But this is huge, Andre. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're local. You're not across from, to the other side of the country. So I do owe you lunch. I'm going to take you out soon. I do want to pick your brain more. And then I know we're a little bit over our time. I appreciate you making this hour and 10 minutes for us. Maybe I'll talk you into a part 2. We can dive deeper into like a training routine. And speaking of asking for help, for the listeners, how can somebody contact you if they want coaching to do their first triathlon or their first marathon? I know you coach.
Yeah, so probably the best way to reach me is through my email. So it's my first name, period, last name at outlook.com. So Andrey.Esipov@outlook.com. Yes, if you're interested, be happy to help you. That's one of my passions, is to help other people achieve their sports goals. And looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Awesome. Andre, well, till next time, thank you so much for the advice, for all the words of wisdom. And again, I don't know how much of this you want to agree or disagree with. I believe you're one of the most baddest men on this earth. The way you've been able to push, persevere, and do some of the most difficult races. I mean, it speaks very highly of how you think, who you are, and about your mindset. I'm truly inspired. I want to get off this call and go work out right now. So, and for those who do need to ask help, which is the third step of what Andre was recommending, ask Andre for help. Reach out to him. It's Andrey, Andrey Esipov, Esipov at, what was the at, Andre?
Outlook.com.
At outlook.com. Okay, Andre. I'm going to reach out to you for some help too then. Thank you so much. Appreciate the listeners as well. And till next time. Cheers.